No, I have a mother and a father. I have two brothers and two sisters. And my mom passed away in 1971. And one of my sisters passed away last year. My father's buried in Quito, Ecuador, and he served in the Navy for 24 years. I was always very proud of him. So when he retired from the Navy, he moved to Ecuador and he spent the rest of his life there. He was 82 years old when he died. He died in 2005, I think.
Why would he pick Ecuador, just out of curiosity?
He was married to an Ecuadorian, so one brother and one sister, actually half brother and half sister. I never refer to them like that, but that's what they are. And he started another family because my mom had died in 1971.
So, when high school, were you the jock? Were you the studious type? What were you?
I was a jock. You know, I played sports. I played football. I played basketball. I played baseball. That was kind of my favorite sport. Always had an interest in baseball.
But never any hopes of making that a career?
I had a tryout with the Kansas City Royals, but I don't have the arm to play it much above the high school level, maybe not even at the high school level. So I was never going anywhere with that. In fact, they never called back.
Well, it is what it is, right?
Well, it was fun to go out, and it's fun to be able to say that I had that opportunity. I'm bragging.
So you graduated from high school?
In 1967 from Robert E. Lee High School. It's a very old school in Jacksonville. It's been there for a long time. One of the oldest.
Jacksonville,
Florida.
Florida. Okay. All right. So when you graduated, were you ready to go into the Army at that point in time?
I think I had joined the Army before I got out of high school or shortly thereafter because I didn't share that information with my mother. Oops. Because I knew that I would get a lot of grief from her about joining the Army because she lived World War II, through World War II. My father was a World War II veteran, and so, you know, they didn't want little Billy going off to war too much, and I knew that would be her attitude. And I was right, because I told her before I left to go to basic training, and wasn't anything she could do about it. I'd already done it.
Now, were you the youngest child?
I was the oldest.
The oldest, okay.
The spoiled, the good brother.
Ooh, okay. That's interesting. Haven't heard anyone put it that way.
I didn't realize it until later in life that I was spoiled.
No, but it was a good kind of
I like to think of myself as a favorite.
There you go.
I'm a narcissist.
You're well-rounded. It's all good. Right.
Couldn't even pronounce it until recently.
There you go. So, what was your mother's reaction when you told her?
You know, I have no recollection of that. I think she was disappointed. I think she was disappointed that I hadn't told her before I had done it, as most parents would be.
Right.
I would be disappointed if my kids did something. Well, I was 18 years old. I didn't do anything behind her back.
Well, there you go. Okay.
I was an adult as far as I knew. At that point in time. Realized later I wasn't.
So, you enlisted in the Army, and then how long was it before you actually went off to basic?
Okay, I went to basic training. I began around the middle of July of 1967. And by the time I got through basic training and flight school, it was July or August of 1968. So I got a couple weeks off, and then I went to Vietnam and served there for 1 year.
1 year. You only had one tour?
I only had one tour.
She
In
loved
fact, I think the first or second day there, I thought, my mother's name was Hazel. I was going, Hazel, come get your little boy. He doesn't know what he's done.
He's done something that may not have been right.
Well, we used to play cowboys and Indians when I was a child, and we never got hurt.
Of course not.
We played war as children.
Didn't get hurt,
Well, I didn't get hurt this time either, but I didn't want to give it more than one chance.
So what was a normal day like for you once you got to Vietnam?
Normal day were very early get-ups because what I did was I flew assault helicopters, and we flew around in 10-ship formations with gunships to protect us on, if need be, both sides. And we'd go out and pick up the infantry and take them out and support them during the day, resupply them. If they weren't staying out, then we'd go pick them up at the end of the day. If they stayed out, then we went back to our base camp. And, excuse me, I don't know where this is coming from. So they were long days. So the days were long. We didn't usually get back until late evening, but most of the time before dark. We would fly in the dark if we were landing back at a base, but we wouldn't land out in the rice paddies in the dark. No light. More like a whiteout in Alaska, if you're more familiar with that.
Now, what type? You said that these were assault helicopters.
Yeah, I flew the Bell UH-1 Huey.
Okay, so it was a Huey.
It was a Huey.
I thought maybe it was Kiowa or one of those.
No, I didn't fly those until later in life as a civilian.
Ah, okay. So any stories from basic? Anything that's stuck in your mind, or any buddies that you've kept in touch with from basic?
The basic training, not so much anyone that I've stayed in touch with. And I don't know why, because I had some good friends. I just don't even remember their names.
You don't remember your sergeant's name?
No, I don't remember company commanders, no sergeants. I was scared of the sergeants. So, I mean, I was 18 years old. I was pretty green.
Right. I could identify with that. Yeah, those guys are terrifying.
Yeah. You know what? And I thought of them as being old men, but I think most of them were 23, 24 years old, 25 years old.
I know,
They looked like old men to me.
the perspectives, well, they change. So what made you want to become an aviator?
My father in the Navy was he was a mechanical engineer, and he worked on airplanes and flew in them. And he had an interesting life in aviation, and I've always heard his stories. He did a lot of different things in the Navy, like hurricane hunters is one thing I remember. He was one of the first crews, not one of the first ones, but he had this job one time where he flew down to McMurdo on the South Pole.
Oh, that's where I always wanted to go.
Yeah.
I'd have done anything to be part of that research team.
That was a pretty long flight for him. So I was raised by an aviator, maybe not a pilot, by someone that had a background of aviation. So didn't have a college to go to the Air Force. I was smarter than joining the Marine Corps.
Hey, now.
Bless the Marine Corps. I love all of you.
That's right. Somebody has to do it, right?
And then the Air Force, in the late 1960s, and I'm going to say this, and I hope it doesn't offend anyone, but we that joined the Army always felt like the Air Force guys that joined the Air Force were copping out. They were taking the easy route.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you in the Army?
No, I was Air Force.
Yeah. I was afraid that was going to come up. That's why I almost didn't say it.
That's okay.
I don't feel that way today, and I didn't feel that way shortly thereafter. I realized that it takes all the services to operate like we do.
Yeah, because no one can do it alone.
No, they can't.
They can't cover everything.
The Army tries.
I know they try, but you also have more people.
What's been interesting to me all my life is I don't know what the word is it's not friction. The
rivalry?
The rivalry between the Air Force and the Army in particular.
Yes. Well, the Army never forgave us for splitting apart and becoming a separate service.
Yeah, they always told us stories like, well, we can't count on the Air Force to supply us with air power, so we want to keep our own air power. And they did, but it was helicopters and spotter planes.
Correct.
It was
a different type.
It was a different kind of airplane flying. Frankly, the Air Force probably wouldn't, but they had the bird dogs. The Air Force flew the bird dogs. That wasn't an easy job. That was pretty dangerous.
That was. We had interviewed one guy who had done that, and it's
That's-
hair-raising stories.
Yes,
But I'm sure you have hair-raising stories too.
I'm pretty sure I do.
You sure you do? All right, so since you were an assault helicopter, so you had door gunners.
We had door gunners. Now, I have stayed in touch with some of them.
Okay. And were those 50 cals?
No, we had M60s,
M6.
M60 machine guns. We had one on each side. And then we all had assault rifles, the M16. Pilots had pistols.
Only the pilots saw.
I don't remember that the crew chief and gunners had pistols. They probably did, but I don't recall seeing them.
Okay. So you had your pilot, your co-pilot,
We had a pistol.
and then you had a
M60?
yeah, but
Okay.
you had a crew chief, and then how many guys on a helicopter?
4.
4. Okay.
Gunner, crew chief, co-pilot, and an aircraft commander. A lot of times the gunners came up from the infantry. And I found that kind of interesting because I thought, man, why? Why would you want to be up here in this situation? But I guess being on the ground was worse.
That's what everybody tells us.
So, and I believe it. I wouldn't want to have been down there.
Because we've interviewed a couple guys who were in the infantry. One even that was in the field artillery, and he got to fly on the helicopters all the time. And I'm going, how did that happen?
Was he a warrant? Was he an officer?
No, he was an enlisted guy.
He's an enlisted guy.
I kind of wondered if that was legal, what he was doing, but hey, he's got the stories.
For the officers that became pilots, it was kind of a career breaker for them because they didn't have a branch. Now there is a specific aviation branch, but they were always like infantry.
There wasn't then. I didn't know that.
So they had command time, but command time of aviation units. In the Army, most of we call the officers RLOs, which stands for Real Live Officers, because we were warrant officers. We referred to ourselves as specialist Spec 5s with a club card, because warrant officers were allowed to go into the officers club. Okay? So, a lot of little anecdotes like that I can just go on and on about. But
So you got in country in 68?
in around the very end of August or the very first week in September.
Okay.
Uh,
And you were in country for 1 year?
for 1 year. An interesting part of my story, or, I think it'll be interesting as the years pass, is I was with a company called the 135th Assault Helicopter Company, and we had pilots and door gunners and crew chiefs from the Royal Australian Navy
Oh, wow.
and American Army. So we were all mixed together in this company. And our call sign was the emus, which is a flightless bird in Australia. But we all said it stood for Experimental Military Unit. The gunship's call sign were the taipans, which is a very poisonous snake that lives in
Taipan?
taipan.
Okay.
It's a very poisonous snake that lives in Australia. So it's a good name for a gunship outfit.
It is. It is.
So anyway, after that, and I was in the 222nd Battalion, and they had 4 companies in that battalion, and 3 of them were stationed at Benoit, and the guys that were stationed at Benoit lived in air-conditioned buildings with running water, all the nice things you'd expect in life, very un-Army like that. So anyway, they had this 4th company called the Emus, the 135th, and they were stationed at a place called Black Horse. And so we lived in the dirt. We lived in tents, and they had kind of an orange dirt there that would get in the engines and get in your teeth, get in your hair. It was like living in Georgia. It's kind of a reddish clay looking stuff, and it was everywhere. You couldn't get away from it. was in our food. It was in what we drank. It was in everything.
That's why your teeth were worn down, right?
Yeah, from gnawing on grit. But we were on there for about 4 months, and then we moved closer to Saigon at a place called Bearcat,
Okay.
which is an old airfield from even before the time of the Vietnam War.
Even before the French?
Yeah, maybe during the French,
Okay.
or slightly there before. But it's gone now. There's a little bit of the PSV left from where we were, but it's all gone. But anyway, getting back to the story, that was a good place to live. We lived in regular barracks, had aluminum roof on it instead of the thatched tents that Black Horse was about. So that was what the living conditions were. I have no recollection of the food other than lunch. We ate out of sea rats. The way we heated them was we took a little C4, used one of the little short cans, lit it on fire, put our food on it, heated it up, and then ate it. That's the only recollection I have of food that we ate, unfortunately. And I'm sure they fed us. I just don't remember it.
Yeah.
They had to have fed us.
Did you have a chow hall at home?
Well, we did. We did. And I have some recollection of going to eat there, but I don't remember what it looked like. I have no memories of it.
Any rocket attacks?
Rocket attacks terrify me because you hear them coming and you don't know which way to run. Or it might say to whom it may concern.
Ooh, that's even worse.
So we had places dug out that
You could dive into.
dive into. Our company commander had a big idea, and he put a movie screen in the center of our complex that was about 30 feet by 20 feet. We'd go over there at night and watch movies, and it was a big target. You know, if you fire for effect, you fire one round, see where it lands, correct. You know, correct from this big screen where the GIs are watching movies. So yeah, rocket attacks were terrifying for me. I did not like those. I did not.
And you had quite a few during your time.
Well, it wasn't every day. You know, and you'll often hear veterans say this, Vietnam every day was pretty much just a normal day, but interrupted by pure terror.
Sure. Yeah.
That's why they use 18 and 19-year-olds. We don't know where we are. We are bulletproof. No, we're not. But didn't find that out for a little while.
Well, yeah. So how many sorties in a day? What was your record?
You know, I don't remember a record. We had some 12, 14-hour days, flying hours. And
Man,
those were long days. And those were bad days because usually to demand a kind of day like that, the infantry was in contact or they were hot on somebody's heels or something's heels. And so we just kept supplying them and moving them around all day long. It was a long day. And then we would be very close. There were safe areas we could go land and park we call them slicks instead of assault helicopter companies. So I'm going to use slick in the future. Park our slicks in safe zones and wait around for the next call.
Then did you have perimeter guards out around that? Or, I mean, yeah, it's a safe zone, but...
You know, I don't remember putting perimeter guards out, but I do remember that we had M60 on each side. We all had rifles, and we all had 38s. So, you know, we guarded ourselves. And like I said, these were what you would expect to be a safe zone, a safer zone. No place in Vietnam is really safe during those years. The VC, the bad guys, the North Vietnamese, they were real bad about pretending like they were farmers by the time they walked down to South Vietnam. So you see farmers and you'd land in a field in a rice paddy out there and all the farmers would disappear.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Well, we always figured they were going and getting their AK, getting their AK-47, but
Might have been.
You know, I don't know.
When you can't tell the
And
enemy.
you can't tell the enemy. You know, and this is a terrible thing to say, but I'm not the first one that ever said it. Kill them all and let God sort them out. He knows the good ones. That's a terrible thing. Black humor. Black humor's a big part of the warrior psyche.
Yeah.
All warriors. I mean, I saw an infantry guy one time. There was a man that was killed, and he got hit in the head with a bullet. And this guy sticks his finger in a hole and says, "Oh, I see what killed him. He's got a hole in his head." You know, I mean, that's pretty black. That's pretty dark. But it's how we overcome maybe the trauma of what we're dealing with it. And a lot of us didn't deal with it. And that is why there's such a problem with PTSD. PTSD is caused by trauma events. That as a young man, they say a young man's brain doesn't fully develop until 24, 25 years old. So when they see a traumatizing event, they file it. Then it comes back as an intrusive thought, and you go, where did that come from?
Yeah, last week at the 75th of Attu, we had an Attu bonsai charge survivor
Yeah? Oh, boy.
get up and say, "I've never told anyone this before, but I live with that nightmare every night."
A lot of
granddaughter's sitting there going, "What?"
Yeah, well, right now the VA is providing Vietnam veterans, and all veterans for that matter, PTSD counseling. They have classes about how to deal with the intrusive thoughts. Anger management. I've put up with anger management all my life. I go to the anger management classes that the VA puts on, and they make me angry. You know, I'm kind of laughing. That's a little of the dark humor. But they've done a wonderful job with me. I'm really happy with them. I mean, I've had my moments with them, but
Yeah, but Alaska VA seems to do better than most of the other states.
they are trying, and apparently so. And they've done really well recently, like the last 2 or 3 years. And right now, they don't have a VA director. I don't know what's going to come of that, but it's a big job.
It is a big job, and you can't win. Regardless of what you do, you can't win.
It's the biggest bureaucracy that the U.S. government handles, I think. I think it's the biggest one. And it takes a real professional manager to handle all what they do.
It does, and somebody whose hide is thicker than elephants.
Yeah. How'd you like to go to work every day and have someone call you an ugly name?
No.
Not that vets would do that.
Oh, of course not. Okay, let's retreat for a minute.
Okay.
Let's go back to flight training.
Okay.
Tell me about what the progression is for helicopters, because I don't know.
Okay. In my day, in the late 60s, and I think this has closed down sometime in the past, for basic flight training where they teach you to hover a helicopter and take a helicopter off and land a helicopter, we went to Fort Walters, Texas, and flew a Hughes TH-55, which is a 2-seat helicopter with a reciprocating engine. And we were there for, I'm going to say 4 months. I don't really remember. Flight school was 9 months long.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. So maybe it wasn't 4 months. Maybe it was like 2 months or 3 months. Okay. And then from there, and I was one of the first classes to go to Hunter Army Airfield. And what we learned there was instrument flying and just flying the Huey. I was fortunate. I got to fly. I got transitioned into Huey. A lot of the guys that went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, which is the aviation school and still is, they flew the old it was a Bell 13. I forget the designation, but it was a 2-seater or 3-seater, some of them, and the Fairchild Hiller OH-23. And the difference between a turbine and those helicopters is the mechanical engine ones, you had to manipulate the throttle. On a turbine helicopter, they put a governor on it, and it modulated it. So when you pull the power in, the governor said, "Oh, you need more gas." It would automatically take care of that. A reciprocating engine one, you have to add gas. You're going the wrong way and get the RPM. It's just a handful when you're first learning. Okay, so I went over to Hunter and did transition work. Flew some more. Got what they call a TAC ticket, which was the instrument training. Then we left there. I went over to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and that was about a month long. And that's where we learned formation flying, night flying, tactics. Now, I don't know what they taught us because I don't have any memories of it other than the formation flying.
Any terrifying moments in any of that flight training?
The night flying used to terrify me. You have some fool standing out there with these batons. You can't watch him. You're looking for the ground. Never understood the theory of that.
Well, it must be like the LSOs on the aircraft carriers,
Just get out of the way, buddy. I'm a student. You don't know where I'm going. And neither do I. So anyway, that was Fort Stewart. Then we graduated. We became warrant officers. We had a little ceremony where they gave us our bars and our wings. Gave me a couple weeks off, and then they sent me to Vietnam.
Okay. Did you have a girlfriend at that point in time?
No. I did, but they didn't have the same boyfriend.
One of these.
Yeah, I've always liked girls, but...
Well. So you didn't have your sweetheart pinning your wings on you?
No, I didn't. However, I had a girlfriend that was an Ecuadorian woman, and her name was Cecilia Wibblesman. My father married into her family. But we had dated some once when I was in Ecuador, and she gave me a gold chain like this, similar to this. And I had that chain the whole time I was in Vietnam. I looked at it as a good luck charm, and I lost it. Well, I don't know when it disappeared. It was towards the end of Vietnam, because I was just beside myself with that I lost it, because I'd had it for 2 or 3 years at that point in time. Cecilia and I had dated when I was 15 years old, I think. So, my first flame.
So you said your dad was Navy. Does that mean you're a Navy brat and moved all over everywhere?
No, it does not.
It does not. Okay.
No. My father, I am a Navy brat, but I didn't move all over. When I was 5 or 6 years old, and my father's in the Navy now, so he loaded up the family, which at that point in time was my mother, myself, a younger sister, and my mom was pregnant with my little brother, Barry. So we moved to Kansas, of all places. Now, my father's in the Navy.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
What's he going to do in Kansas? So we lived in this old shack of a place, and he took off. I think he went to Taiwan that time or somewhere, but he was gone the whole year. He left my mother pregnant with 2 little kids. And that woman, she was from Arkansas. When he got back, we moved back to Jacksonville, Florida, and she told him she wasn't moving anymore. So my father was gone a lot of times. When he came back, he was a lot of fun. He was a good father because he'd take us water skiing and fishing, and, we did things when he was around.
So was he at sea or was he on shore when he'd be deployed?
He was with an airplane somewhere. Okay. He was either working on the airplanes, and he actually he was on aircraft carriers too, off and on. I don't know that he was ever on a submarine.
Probably.
No, probably not. But he worked on F-8Us, those little Lockheeds. DC-3s was a favorite plane of his. He worked on a lot of different airplanes. During World War II, I think he flew on the Catalina.
PBY Catalina?
The PBY Catalina, I think.
Plane. Okay.
Yeah, he says they used to go out and mess with the Japanese and get them to chase them back across the islands. Where the Marines, yes, the South Pacific, where the Marines would shoot the Japanese airplanes down.
There you go. Works.
Well, that sounds like a war story to me.
Wait a minute. Might be a tall tale too. Okay. Back to Vietnam. We're
Back to Vietnam.
Back to Vietnam.
Okay, keep me straight.
I try to do this in small doses.
Keep me straight, but things pop into my head that
It's easier. Yeah.
I want to share.
Right. You said that you had a few hairy missions.
Okay, I did.
Are you willing to talk about?
I am willing to talk about them. However, I don't take responsibility from my view of these stories as opposed to someone that might come on later and remember it a different way, especially now. I'm 69 years old and my memory's starting to fade of those events. And I want them to fade. I just want them to go away. So I'm going to tell you some stories now. Is that what you'd like? Okay, the very first day that I went to be a crew member on a helicopter in Vietnam, we were single ship. We were doing resupply that day. And somebody got in a firefight with this group, and my first day on the job. So I go out with this guy that'd been there 10 months. I kind of giggle there, but this is not funny. And we were shooting them up. We were having a good time. And then one guy down there got to a weapon, and they killed the aircraft commander. They shot him in the head and killed him. I didn't even know where I was. The crew chief pointed to a direction. So I went that way. Helicopter was all shot up. Was barely running. Scared the living bejesus out of me. So I got back to a place called Duc Hoa. Landed the helicopter. Fuel just pouring out of it. I mean, it was shot up. And I had this pilot, Mr. Miller. He was from New Hampshire. And he was an old-timer. He was 21 years old. He was an old-timer, believe me. So anyway, that happened my first day on the job. And that's had a big impact on my life. That's when it dawned on me that we're not playing cowboys and Indians anymore. Nope. So that was one of the bad things that happened to me on the very first day. I acquired some nicknames through this, but I'm going to tell 2 or 3 more stories, hopefully in the order that they happen. On the 23rd of October at a place called Ben Tre, we went down there that day with 4 gunships and 10 slicks and came home that night with 1 slick and no gunships. And so we always referred to that day as an emu shoot. And we lost more helicopters than that. We didn't lose all of them. We only lost 1 or 2 of them. But they all got shot up so bad they couldn't fly.
All right, so if they got shot up so bad they couldn't fly.
We brought some more helicopters down, 2 or 3 during that day. I don't remember how many. And then they got shot up. I mean, and that's why I call it an emu shoot. We had to be relieved by, I believe the people that relieved us was the 240th Helicopter Assault Helicopter Company, and they were the Greyhounds, and their gunships were known as the Mad Dogs.
Okay. So they actually sent other helicopters down to pick up those pilots?
You know, we got bound up. No, not to pick them up, to keep working with the infantry. Okay. Just because we were in a pretty serious firefight all day. And let me tell you how they got it set up. And they would often do this. The bad guys would let us get the first load in there. And then when we left to go get the second load, then the firefight would start. And so then we couldn't get back in the original landing zone. We tried, bless our hearts, but it just didn't work out very well for us that day, unfortunately.
So were there efforts to recover those crews? Or did the crews...
Oh, the crews got back. Yeah, you know what? I don't have any recollection. Maybe they sent a maintenance crew in there to patch up bullet holes and replace, components that were damaged beyond. But, we all got back.
Were your resupply parts inventory pretty good?
They were pretty good. We had a little problem getting barrels for our M60s.
Why, because you kept overheating them?
That's exactly why. The Thai Army, which Bearcat had the Thai Army base there while we were there, they had lots of barrels for M60s. So we had a smart supply sergeant and
You're invaluable.
invaluable. He was a bit of an outlaw. I need say no more.
Good ones were.
I even remember his name, Higgins. Higgins ever sees this, he'll probably deny that.
Of course. Who, me?
Who, me? Okay, another day, November 6th. We were out doing ash and trash again that day, and I was flying as a co-pilot. The deal on that day was they put 2 high-time co-pilots together. The other pilot, the aircraft commander, was the first lieutenant, so he was actually the aircraft commander. So we were flying around a place called Som Bay, not pronouncing it right, and we had this group on here that were civilians, and they wanted to go down there and look at stuff. And I said, don't go down there. I know, don't go down there. Remember 15 September earlier? Not a gunship, not an assault helicopter. Don't go down there. Do not go down there. Anyway, we went down there, and we got the hell shot out of us, and we crashed the helicopter. It rolled over on its side. We were doing pretty well until we touched down. And we touched down with a little forward speed and ran into a dike in a rice field, and it flipped us over on the side. You know, that last 100 feet was interesting because you're out of control. You're thinking, I might die. But we touched down real smooth, a little forward. Next thing I know, we're up on our side. Hit that windshield as hard as I could with my fist. And those things aren't easy to break. I never did break it. So then I got calmed down and climbed out the other door that was on the upside. And I stepped out. It was easy to get out of it. The way we got saved, then we had to go hide. There were some guys in that rice field that disappeared too. So we weren't flying away from there. We were on our side. So we went off in the woods and hid out. And then another helicopter about an hour and a half later saw the black smoke and came up there to see what it was. And there's a helicopter turned over on its side. And he picked us up. It's the only time I ever flew in a Chinook. I love those guys. Let's see. There were lots of days where I was with a pilot one time that the round came up through the floorboard and it hit him in the leg, shrapnel did. He bled a little bit. He wasn't hurt seriously. He didn't even get to go home. They just patched him up. Patch him up. I was flying one day, and you have to know about the helicopter. I'm going to try and visualize it. At a panel sitting down to the right between the two pilots, and it was a warning panel. And it would tell you right fuel boost pumps out, hydraulics, tails, you know, whatever, some real simple little problems. And the way, when it came on the dashboard, you had a little square about 1 inch by 2 inches, and it said master caution on it. So when that thing lit, you looked down to see what the problem was. And so that thing lit, I looked down and it was gone. Because a bullet came up that hit my buddy in his leg with a shrapnel or whatever it was and blew the master caution away. So I told Lead, hey, I've got a master caution on. And he said, what's on? I said, I don't know. The master caution panel's gone.
I tell you, bud.
I'd tell you, but I can look through where the master caution's supposed to be. And there's a hole there. So I took my buddy up to a base. I think it was Vin Long. I don't really remember where it was. They patched him up. He was okay. So that's another little war story that's simple.
Do you have any missions where they had the landing zone zeroed in with mortars?
You know, we used to go to a place called Tay Nin that was up at the top of a little mountain. I think the name of it was Nui Ba Den. Is that possible? I hated going up there. It was a fire support base, and the bad guys were down below it, so they were shooting up.
Right. Good.
There was no place to go, and we kept those guys supplied. I had a couple missions like to that mountain, but that was a pretty scary thing.
So you're bringing ammo, you're bringing food, you're bringing virtually everything into them?
Yeah. Because you couldn't pass from the mountain top down. It was full of bad guys.
What was your absolute worst day in your Vietnam tour?
Probably my first day
I
flying.
was going to say, I think that'd be the first day.
Yes.
How about your best day? Or if there was one. Yeah, the day you left.
You know, this is interesting, and I'm going to say the day I left because that really was the best day. But an issue I have, and I've never been able to resolve it, I don't have any memory whatsoever of having left Vietnam. None. Zero. Nada. I think I must have got on an airplane at Tan Son Nhut, but where it went, I can't tell you. I don't know if it went to Hawaii and then California. I don't know if it went some other direction.
Maybe it went to Clark. Yeah.
And I don't know why I don't remember. Maybe I had had too much to drink when I was leaving Vietnam.
Defense mechanism.
You know, I don't know why I don't remember those things. I have some recollection of going there, which was exciting. Flying helicopters in Vietnam was, you know, we used to read stories about George Custer and Jack Pershing out on the frontier, and we felt like we were the cavalry, the modern day cavalry. There's nothing gets your heart more proud and beating so fast as 10 helicopters going somewhere. I mean, it was charge. Let's go. And all the guys are like that. It was just fun. It was not fun being in shootouts. Very noisy environment. The gunships they were armed with miniguns and rockets. Those miniguns make a terrible noise. Terrible, terrible.
Yeah,
Loud.
you can feel all that on the
Yeah.
helicopter.
I would try and demonstrate it, but I wouldn't do it justice. I will after you turn the camera off. And then if I fail, then we'll get somebody else to show them.
There you go. That'll work.
To say it.
That'll work. So, other than your flip over, did you have any other crashes? Or any other?
No, my flip over, I had lots of emergencies because I was shot up, but those things don't have near the. I was shot down a total of 7 times in Vietnam. You know, and that's by bullets, and I got shot up a lot worse than that, more times than that. But like I said earlier, the days were pretty boring, except the unboring ones.
With those terrifying.
And they were terrifying, to be quite frank. I think the only way we deal with our people say, oh, I didn't terrorize them. They want to say I didn't terrorize them. Yeah, more power to them. You know, the way we were dressed in Vietnam is kind of interesting, too, because we had a chicken vest, which was, I guess, lead. It was heavy,
Lead plates.
and it covered our chest area. And we had a flak suit, had a flight shirt, had Nomax, anti-burn material. And it was hot in Vietnam. It was hot. Then we had a little slide thing on the door. We flew with the doors off most of the time. That slid forward. And when you landed, the first thing the crew chief would do is run up, move that slide out of the way. And after the helicopter was shut down, we'd get out and take all that heavy, hot stuff off. Because we got pretty good at putting it on if we had to get it on in a hurry. It was just hot there. It was hot.
Yeah, you could sweat off 5 to 8 pounds a day without a problem, right?
I think so. You know, I look back I have very few pictures of those times, but it's a bunch of naked guys hanging around helicopters. You know, nobody wore a shirt. You know, we were just stripped down. I can't imagine an army allowing that. But they did. They realized it was hot. They were hot too. So that was interesting.
So you were not wounded, correct?
I was not wounded.
Okay.
I didn't want to be wounded. I did not want a Purple Heart in those days. I didn't want one because I knew it involved getting hurt.
I'm adverse to getting hurt, yeah. That I can understand.
You know what? I got hurt. I'll tell this story. The way I got hurt, there's no Purple Heart for it. But I sprayed Agent Orange in Vietnam. I'm a diabetic. I have been diagnosed with PTSD. I go to a great number of meetings trying to help me out with it. The VA does a good job of that. They provide some mechanisms to deal with it. I've had anger management problems just about my entire life. Doing better with those right now. So when I go to those classes, they make me angry. Some black humor. Take all of this with a grain of salt, folks. They've done a good job for me. One thing the VA did for me that saved my life is I had a tumor above my right eye and real close to the front, the size of a tennis ball.
Good Lord.
Good Lord, yes. Wasn't cancer, thankfully. Spent 2 months in the hospital while a doctor took it out. It's going to sound strange to say, but that tumor saved my life. How is that?
Yeah.
They found an aneurysm, and the doctor told me that aneurysm would have killed me a lot quicker than a brain tumor. So I say brain tumor saved my life. It's a good way to look at it. I think I already said I was in the hospital for that little procedure for 2 months. The VA paid for everything. They diagnosed it. They found it out. They sent me to one of the best neurosurgeons in Anchorage, Alaska. So I'm thankful for the VA.
There you go.
When I badmouth them, I'm just not sincere.
Yep, that I can understand. Okay, we always end these if you're ready to end.
I think I'm ready. I think I've covered my story.
We always end these with a thinking question. If you had one message to leave to future generations, what would it be? Now, I'm going to turn the camera off and let you think about that for a bit, and then you just give me a high sign, and we'll turn it back on. There you go.
Okay, about the time I joined the Army in the real late 60s and the real early 70s, the United States of America was very divided. Had a lot of race problems, had a lot of political problems, had a president that did things that were not allowed by our Constitution, and the country was very much divided. And I'd just like to say that in 1960s, I was glad they went away. People were burning their draft cards, and it was just a divisive time. And I dreamed and hoped that we would never get back to those years like that. Now, fast forward to 2018. Right now, we have a very similar thing going on in our nation. We're divided. And I feel like I know why, and I'll be really happy when it goes away. So, keep your chin up, folks. It seems like the United States every 50 years has to get decisive. So, had a revolution, had a civil war, had World War I, had World War II, had the Korean War, had the Vietnam War, and then we've had in the 1990s and the years 2000, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. There's just a lot going on. North Korea is an issue. And I would just like to tell you to keep your chin up. This too will go away. It will. And we need to be united because that's what it's going to take to turn things around. But things are not I had another thought, but it went away. But anyway, I'll close saying that. Keep the faith. And, oh, I know what I was going to say. I went to Washington, D.C. about 3 weeks ago because they dedicated a monument for helicopter pilots from 1960 to 1975. Beautiful ceremony. Beautiful.
Where's that at?
And it's in Washington, D.C. at the Arlington Cemetery.
Arlington.
Yeah. So, I've never seen so much brass. This Washington, D.C., you need to go see it because it's probably the greatest place I've ever been in my life. I just thoroughly enjoyed seeing it. So clean, so well laid out, so many white crosses. So, as we like to say about the Vietnam, how do we say this? All gave some, and some gave all. And thank you for those that gave all. You're truly heroes, even though you're not with us anymore. And this is going to conclude this. I hope I've done well enough for it to be a good recording. And keep the faith, folks. Keep the faith.
We want to thank you for consenting to do this interview, and most of all, thank you for your service to the nation.
Thank you.